Today is a very special episode because I sat down for an hour with my past mindset coach to talk about something that more entrepreneurs should really think about. All the things that are attached to hustling and grinding to gain success, the meaning of money and the story we attach to those, and all of the micro stories that we are not even aware of that drive our actions. And sometimes we feel like we're getting nowhere even if we are hitting goals on paper. We want to talk about all of this so that you also realize what patterns are not serving you and fix them. And I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you'll get away with a new, completely new way of looking at your business, the way you do things, the way you plan for the future, and what is aligned compared to what is just pure vanity. This is something that I'm really excited about, and let's dive in the interview. I cannot wait for you to watch it. Jordan, welcome to the show. I'm very excited that you're here today because about a year ago, we crossed paths and you really helped me uncover some of the invisible things that govern my action at the time that I was completely unaware of. And I'm very excited about these sessions because I want to ask you a few questions for people that have no idea about what you do and the help that you can bring to the world and how much you helped me as well. So I'm very excited to dive in. Welcome.
Great to be here, man. Awesome. And yeah, great to reconnect and to sit down and have a deeper conversation about some of the things that have been coming up lately. I know we've kind of briefly caught up a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, but yeah, man, I'm excited to dive in.
Amazing. Well, first of all, we need to address the elephant in the room in terms of, for people that never heard of you, how would you describe what you do in the simplest way possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the simplest way possible, what I help existing entrepreneurs do is to rebuild and rewire the internal architecture. So aligning the mind, the body, and the soul with the vision, the business that they're currently building so that they can sustainably hold it long term, as well as the wealth that they're generating, and do it from a place of truth and authenticity and less burnout, less sabotage, and anything that comes with that. So that would be the shortest answer I could possibly give.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm sure you didn't wake up one morning thinking, this is exactly what I want to do. How did you get here? And just tell me a little bit about how you started out. I know you've got a history, you've got a story. I've been checking your Instagram. You never really speak too much about it. So I'm very curious to dive deeper into how you started your journey and how you got here.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So I guess the best place to start was my first kind of spark for entrepreneurship or spark to get into do something myself was many, many years ago while I was still, in college at the time. I was studying business and I was realizing that I was learning business from people who didn't have businesses, and that kind of annoyed me. And that kind of sparked the journey of like, okay, well, where can I learn business? How can I learn to create something myself? And that was always a thing that was at the back of my mind, even though I never really went too deep into it. It was more just a seed that was there. I was like, I want to do my own thing one day. I want to go and do the path that's a little bit different. So I started experimenting with many, many different things. So freelancing a lot, I was doing all sorts. I was designing things on Photoshop and selling them. I was doing graphic design, video editing, freelancing. I was building websites. I was doing anything I could possibly do to generate some income for myself. And even while I was in college, I was doing some of these things while I was getting ready for presentations. I would actually, instead of doing the presentation myself or doing some of the things myself, I would hire somebody to do parts of it and then fill in the gaps. And then I would almost have a team to help me while I was running things in college. So that was my first, my first indication to going that path. So then that kind of developed into its own thing. I had a desire to travel, which was sparked very, very early on in my life as I made any inclination possible to move in a direction where I could work abroad or do something outside of where I was currently living, which was Ireland. I would lean in that direction. So I would go and I would work jobs in the south of France. I would go to Spain. I would go to the US, and I would travel around. So that kind of gave me the travel bug very, very early on. And I knew that this thing I wanted to build and the thing I wanted to do was travel. The two of them had to be very closely linked together. So that was my journey of discovering, then how do I do that? Well, the first thing for me was online business. So as I was doing this freelancing and these different things, I eventually moved into the agency model. All while doing that, I was creating content on TikTok, building my own personal brand, getting used to speaking, just about the things I was doing. It was more just an experiment for me, and I was selling digital products while I was doing that as well. So that was kind of me just trying to do a bunch of different things and seeing what sticks. So the agency model kind of resonated with me simply because it was, a lot of reoccurring revenue. I could work with high ticket clients and I could focus all in on those clients instead of working with a lot of different people. I like to work with a small group of people very intimately. And that's kind of trickled into what I do now as well. But that was my first indication of that. So I was able to do that. And that was kind of my journey for the last, previous to the last 2.5 years or so, three or 4 years before that. That's while I was doing all these different things. And throughout that time, I was leaning into the personal development side of things, as we all do in some ways, as we go on this entrepreneurial journey. And what resonated deeply with me was one man in specifically, which his name was Bob Proctor, and may he rest in peace. He's not around and not with us anymore. But he was my first introduction to the spirituality, the law of attraction, the manifestation side of things, and that was very intriguing to me. That was something that really resonated with me, and I knew very early on, even while I was doing these different things, that I wanted to do something like this someday. But my current mindset at the time was I need to develop skills because I was just starting. I didn't know marketing. I didn't know how to do things. So the best way for me to build those skills was to go on the path of doing things for people so that I could develop those skills and one day translate them into, doing my own thing. And that came as a crossroads for me. But I leaned into this more from a place where I had been working really, really long hours in the agency I was running. I had many different team members. I was doing a lot of different things, and I'd kind of forgotten about that original vision because I was so deep into what I was doing. So I got to this place where I was hitting these income goals that I'd set for myself. I was traveling the world. I was living in Spain at the time, so things were going really, really well. But I felt really empty, and I felt really hollow, and I felt like I was just doing the wrong thing. And a lot of that was coming from the energy I was building the business from as well. I was coming from a lot of force, a lot of feeling like I needed to prove myself, feeling like I needed to perform, a lot of these different things that are quite common amongst many entrepreneurs. And that came to the point where I decided that this is no longer how I want to live. I refuse to live a life believing that everything has to be incredibly difficult and challenging all the time just to have this version of success that is glorified online. And that resonated with me very, very early. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a leap of faith and, completely drop everything I was doing and go and start this thing in this new direction, which was about 2.5 years ago or so, and start that path of experimenting what it's like to really help people with the things that are most aligned with what I feel like I'm meant to do here. And then that sparked its own journey of just, becoming the embodiment of what I talk about, because, that's a core value for me, is being an embodiment of what you talk about, what you teach, what you share. So that to me was then a journey of self-discovery, knowing thyself on a deeper level, dissolving the different things that were driving me, and really coming to a state of more inner peace, more alignment, and more excitement for growing something long-term and sustainable, and not rushing into needing things to be perfect right away, but knowing that I'm dedicating my life's work to this.
I love the word alignment. And if there is something that I admire you for, it's that you emanate the sense of very deep awareness about yourself. Even the story that you thought you were relatively young, and your story starts when you were even younger. And all of these things you've done, I feel like you are intuitively in line with your soul in a way that the push that your soul wanted to move you towards. And this is not something that many of us have. This is probably one of the reasons why you are one of the guides in your field. And but I'm thinking about people that have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I've got a past in spirituality as well. When I was in Milan back in my 20s, I was deep into spirituality, and then I got sucked into the doing world, my career, and then became my business. And that it felt aligned in a very twisted way because I was working my fingers to the bone until that feeling of not being aligned was so saturated that things had to change. And I know that many people out there, especially entrepreneurs, because it's one of the most difficult things you could do, and that's how you feel the most alone, especially on the online business world. You feel like you hit burnout sometimes because that's your programming. I'm going to work and work and work. And only few people really understand that that's not the only way you can do things. And I realized, especially with you, working with you, that our actions are led by programmings that they've been installed by, you know, our childhood, our family, our environment, even ourselves and what we believe in, right? How do we become aware of all of these stories that define what we do and what we believe in? And once we realize them, how do we shift those stories for more empowering ones, if it makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally resonate with what you're saying and the question that you're asking. First of all, I will say that my main purpose here as well, just for context around how I'll answer this, is to bridge the two worlds between practicality and spirituality. Because I think up until a little bit more recently, they've been two separate things where it's either you're on the real spiritual side and, you know, everything's amazing, inner peace, beautiful, but there's like a stagnation in purpose and actualization of something that is meaningful. And then you have the other side where it's like all about action, all about movement, but there's kind of this lacking on the spiritual aspect or the more internal peace side of things, if you want to refer to it that way as well. So my main purpose is to bridge those two worlds, which I relate back to my whole journey, experiencing, you know, things through childhood and then up into developing this awareness that you mentioned earlier, which, you know, you can refer to it as intuition, all these different things. And to answer your question, man, when it comes to these different stories, the stories start in the mind, but the mind, there's a deeper aspect to the mind that holds those stories in place, which is the energy. So we'll refer to the mind first of all. These stories oftentimes, you know, are formed in those early formative years. And not saying that everything down to the T is related to childhood, because sometimes you can oversimplify things and say that they are, but oftentimes they are, because those early formative years, we don't have a conscious mind that's fully developed yet. We have a subconscious mind that is trying to make sense of the world because we don't know anything. We don't know how to walk or talk or what those things over there are, what those people are, what is this whole world about. Everything is wide open. So our mind is grasping onto any form of certainty around us. So we get certainty from our parents, we get certainty from, you know, the people around us, the community where we are raised, the culture within that community, and obviously the ancestral line that is passed down from our family through DNA and through these different aspects. So we're brought into the world with a lot of different things that are just part of our journey. Now, when I say part of our journey, we're referencing the soul aspect. So the soul aspect is the soul's journey. The soul's journey came in here to embody this human vehicle that is having this temporary human experience here, right? And, you know, stick with me. We are going on this path and moving in this on this journey. So we almost, you know, we can refer to it as choosing the life that we had to learn a certain specific set of lessons. And the stories that are developed through these, you know, times in childhood are often coming from, yes, our parents and environment, culture, things like that. But they're not there as negative things to just hold us back. They're there to be transformed. They're there to be transmuted into something more powerful. Because the deepest layer of fulfillment that we can have in this life is to transmute something that was once painful, something that was once limiting, and use our free will to transmute it into something purposeful. So when we look at these stories, the stories are picked up, let's say our father's energy would be the masculine energy. The masculine energy is more related to the structure, the discipline. For example, if you want to use simple terms, the energy of money is very related to that as well as the feminine. The feminine is more of the mother side, which is more of the receiving, right? We make money, we receive money. It's a big part of that energy as well, of whether we receive more or less. And the feminine aspect of that, you know, part of our life is also the nurturing side, the compassionate side. So we pick up not just stories from the parents that we have and the community that we're in, the culture that we're raised in, but we pick up their energy. We pick up how they feel, because we are naturally energetic human beings. Like, we feel things all the time, some a little bit more than others, and some have different abilities in this way, some different gifts. I would consider myself someone who has a lot of feeling abilities, to be able to feel into different things and be able to look at that from a different perspective using my mind and different areas. But we all have these abilities to different degrees. And when we are in these environments growing up, we pick up on not only the stories that are being told, but the energy that is there. So, for example, if we use money, the story around money growing up could be there's a lack of, it's never enough. We don't have enough. We can't have this. We can't have that. We can't have this because there's just not enough. So therefore, we're programmed from that very early age to think that there is a lack of money. There's a lack of abundance. Abundance is not something that is for us. And that leans into the energy that is then carried from our parents within those stories. So, for example, there's going to be an energy of scarcity. There's going to be an energy of fear. That's really what we're talking about when we're talking about scarcity. We're talking about a fear where we don't know where the next bit of money is coming from, because we're afraid of the fact that we may not make it again. We may get it today, it may never come back. And that's just a way of thinking, because that's not necessarily truth. It just may have been truth at that specific time. So we take it on as truth, and then we form these stories that are unconscious a lot of the time. So then we just go on this journey throughout our life to unravel these different things. And this can be applied to love as well. If there was a different relationship between your mother and father that maybe wasn't close, maybe there was a relationship between you and your mother, you and your father, whatever the case is, that was something that felt distant, or if there was any emotional neglect, that could be very, very tied to self-worth, and very, very tied to the receivership of money or the receivership of love. So therefore, kind of, it starts to ingrain this unconscious behavior or pattern of, I must perform to receive the love that my soul truly wants. Because we're here to love, we're here for unity, we're here to, at the deepest level, vision, mission, purpose, these different aspects that we talk about, building of a business, is there to express love into the world. Creation is what it is at the deepest level. So when we believe that we are not worthy to receive because of something that happened early in our life, then we will go our lives looking to perform, looking to earn this love that we feel like we truly deserve or truly desire at this deepest level. But we must go on the journey then to unwire not only the energy that's attached to that, but the stories that are attached to that, and go on this journey of unraveling that to realize that we are already whole within. And when we realize we are already whole within, then we can build from love, because the love emanates from within.
And when you were saying about the stories, I've had them all. Like, I think many of us have them all. I grew up in a family where money was never enough. Actually, money was the cause of the conflict, and my parents got divorced when I was 8. So I had them all entangled together. And and I was just trying to think, because the key point for me when you were speaking is like understanding that that is a story that defines you. It's not just fate. It's not just your situation is never going to change. That paradigm for many people never changes, because you just believe that that is your life. I am going to be broke. I'm going to have a wife that will abuse me, and I will never be able to be fulfilled in life. Many people live this way. I've been fortunate enough to never believe that fully. I was in contact with it, but I always challenged it, and I think it's a natural talent. But if I want to call anybody listening to really understand one thing about this, is that things can change, and everything you believe can change as well, because really reality is made up. And it sounds so it sounds so woo woo and nonsense, but I always think about this. If you were to look at any object around you right now, somebody thought of it before he made it. It's not the other way around. It wasn't just there and somebody said, okay, I believe that that exists. It was completely the opposite. And why would that any different for anything else we don't see in terms of emotions, in terms of actions, in terms of possibilities? That one thing for me changed everything. But it's interesting. Interesting because the world is really dominated by all of these stories, and we just act following that kind of emotion. But for example, money story is something that it's incredibly powerful. I don't know why, but we demonize money. We love it at the same time. We want wealth, and then at the same time we reject it subconsciously. We work with many clients that have been burned out because they've been working way too hard for the wrong reasons, and they attached the meaning of pain to money because that's what was their mission. They burned out with it, and then they are struggling to grow. So let's talk about money for a second. Like if you were with a client that needed to detach that pain associated with making money, what would be your process to untangle that and help them switch to a different story?
Mm. So there would definitely be more context required around that. Like I would have to know the person's background and everything as well. But I mean, from a surface level, or at least from a foundational understanding, it would be to understand how was the building of the business originally tied to that understanding that pain had to be associated with it. So for example, there would be likely some form of pain that happened in their life at some stage to believe that they weren't worthy of being able to create something or express something in a way that is authentic, or whatever the case was, from a place of ease. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's absolutely no judgment with anything that we're talking about here. It's more just like we're all on our own journey in a very unique way. And these are all things, again, like I said, to be transmuted. It's not that these are wrong or bad or negative. It's that they are there to be transmuted. It's just that choice is made from the person using their free will. So when someone, let's say, is building something from that association that it must be painful, then yes, there would be a belief there in place that the only way I can progress and make money is if it is painful or if it is hard. And oftentimes, I mean, you know, we do consume quite a lot of content. We live in an information age that it's slowly changing, right? Now with the integration of AI, we have so much access to information that up until now, there's a lot of content that's out there as well that promotes this kind of hustle mentality. And hey, look, humanity was at a time a number of years ago where that was needed, where there was people who like weren't doing much, and then this big opportunity of being online and everybody had access to building some sort of business or express themselves in some way. Then it was the thing that humanity needed at that time to express themselves by working harder, because it got people to a place where they could create something. But then, you know, solutions to some problems cause more problems in different ways. So then it becomes, okay, well, how do we actually get back to this place of inner peace? Why are we actually doing any of this in the first place? And that's kind of what brings me to this next point, which is, what's the purpose behind the work? And what's the purpose behind the operating of the business in the first place? Like, what was the reason you started doing it? Was it for freedom? Was it to have a massive impact? Or was it built out of neediness, attachment, right? These different elements of fear that we kind of briefly touched on here. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but we have to be able to establish where that energy is coming from and the reason that it's being built in the first place. Because it's not necessarily that building and spending long hours working is negative. That's not, because some people love to do that, and that's absolutely fine. There's often times where I find myself getting into a flow state and I would work for hours on end because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. The deeper aspect is to understand, when I create a business for the purpose of freedom, and then I actually create that freedom where I can travel and I can spend time by myself and I can go and meet people and I have a lot of free time. If there's unexamined aspects of the unconscious that are underneath the surface, that peace or freedom will not be enjoyed. So it will be replaced with work, because those deeper aspects that maybe are not addressed, or maybe they're just there under the surface, maybe you don't even know anything about them. Again, nothing wrong with that. But that will cause this kind of irritation in the silence, where there feels like there has to be something done, because if I'm not being productive, then that means I am not worthy, or that means that I will not receive the love that I truly want, the deepest level of my heart. And again, the stuff goes deep, which is why it always comes back to this. And truly, to get to a place where you can enjoy the freedom that you create, or really build from that place of alignment, right? And we'll probably touch on that as we go throughout this conversation. But to truly go to that place, it's an internal state of being. It's not necessarily a system or a process, even though those things are helpful, absolutely. But you can systematize a whole business and still not enjoy your freedom. And that begs the question, like, what's the thing that's going to do it? Well, it's not doing more in that case. It's actually going within and uncovering the deeper aspect of why that business was being built in the first place. And again, that's just a journey. And some people go on the journey of building something massive and realize, hey, I didn't want to do this anymore. I was building it from this energy that wasn't sustainable, fear, whatever the case was. Many people walk that path, but there's many paths that you can walk. But it comes back to the soul's journey, because the soul will go on its evolution naturally anyway. We have the free will to choose at each and every moment of which direction we want to take that, but inevitably our soul will take us in a certain direction. So, for example, what I mean by this is that, let's say a business has started and it's built, into this incredible level of, let's say, revenue, income, whatever the case is. But then the founder gets to a point where it's like, hey, I built this from the wrong energy, and I don't like this. I don't enjoy this. It's not giving me what I actually wanted in the first place. Then that was a key point in the journey that causes a point of transition, where it's like, hey, now I got to go explore this other side of life and actually figure out what is my truth, what are these things. But then there can also be a path for somebody who, doesn't have to go off and do that, but realizes that much earlier and then builds from a more sustainable place. None of them is right or wrong. It's just your own unique path. It's just we have the choice to decide at each and every moment which direction we want to take that. And it will either be a proactive choice to go in a certain direction to ask those deeper questions, or it will be a path of you ignore those questions and you get to the point of experiencing a tremendous amount of pain to force you to go in to do that anyway. So this work is not optional. It is the work that every person must do, either in this lifetime or the next, whether you believe that or not. And that comes from a proactive choice where you can simply just do it now and actually do it all now. You can do all that work now and build from that sustainable place, from alignment, and I really, really enjoy your life. Or it can come from this place where you just keep going, keep ignoring, and then you experience pain to point you back in to do it anyway.
Yeah, I'll be falling into that category. And I don't know where I heard this, but somebody said, like, the universe is always telling you what to do, like to follow your direction. And if you don't listen, the universe will increase the volume until you do. And I've experienced that. My wife and we've experienced that in many, many, many ways and many years. And what can I say? We are very thick. We don't want to listen to the universe. This makes me think about like my career in visual effects. I loved it, absolutely loved it, but it was implied that I had to work so many hours because films take a long time to get produced. And that mentality I carried over when it did not become enjoyable anymore. I was becoming just a cog in a machine, and I didn't know, I didn't feel aligned. I was just frankly very pissed because I wanted to optimize things for my team. I wasn't able to because the bosses wouldn't allow me, and all of that frustration. And then we got tired and we said, you know what, let's create something for ourselves. And we did that. But we brought the same mentality of hustle and grind because, you need to make it work. The assumption that it wasn't aligned arrived way later. And now we tell the story where I took a picture of Alessia on one summer. We were on holiday, and in the middle of the day, she needed to take a nap. And she had a laptop in front of her. She was trying to send an email or maybe reach some online magazines to get some PR or whatever. I don't remember what we were trying to do. But she was exhausted. And I took a picture and I thought maybe this will be useful in the future. Oh, I didn't think much of it. But now that I think of it, I'm like, how much does it take for somebody to really understand that this is not aligned and it can be done in a different way? And we had to go through a series of burnouts. And I always say, Alessia freaked out on me. And one day said, you know what, you expect me to dance until I'm 90? This is not going to happen. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is what we signed up for, right? So we need to keep working. And she said, nope. And you can't do it without me. So deal with it. That was one of the moments for me when I said, okay, this is definitely not happening anymore. I need to figure out a new way. But that sitting with the pain that was unavoidable led me to discover, to ask the questions like, what am I doing this for? Because, okay, maybe I do it for safety. I want to feel safe. I want to feel, have a reliable income. Sure. But you didn't feel this way when you had 40K months, right? That was abundant. To me, it was, definitely was. Why were you still stressed during those times? Enough was never enough. So if you stop for a second, I stopped for a second and asked myself, well, if I had 100K then a month, would that be any different? Maybe I would have a bigger team. That maybe I would have a big more expenses, and the story would be exactly the same. So that must not be it. That's when we started realizing, okay, so this is a very intricate game that something on somebody has set up for us. This is for us to learn, and that for me is one of the most important thing. Like if you really understand that everything that happens to you happens for you, that changes everything. So every time we feel, or I personally feel not aligned, I sit there and ask myself, okay, why do I feel this way? And I think it's so important, because if until you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, there is no way you can get out of this game of actions just for the sake of actions, making money for the sake of making money, pleasing people to get validation, grow the YouTube channel, whatever you want trying to do. And where am I going with this? I don't know, but this is where we are, and
I can jump
I
in here.
want I want to bring you here because we need a reminder that it doesn't matter what you do. It matters how you feel, because if you feel amazing about what you do, everything else doesn't matter. Like it will sort itself out. But there's something else I want to talk to you about, and it's a sense of certainty that things will pan out the way you desire. And again, this is one thing that I've been blessed with. Intuitively, I didn't learn it, it was just in me. I remember when I was 14, I went to the cinema and watched Toy Story. And I just remember me being mesmerized at the screen and thinking, somebody did this, right? A human being, because there was no AI at the time. Therefore, I want to be one of those. So I came back to my family that night. We had a family dinner, and I remember saying, guys, I'm going to work in a cinema one day. And everybody laughed in a cute way. They were trying, yeah, of course you will. Of course you will. But then nobody believed me. And I remember being a little bit pissed about it. I'm like, I'm gonna show you. And then I dedicated the rest of my life, like 15 years later, I was working with Peter Jackson in his private team. I worked with Christopher Nolan in Interstellar. I've did so many things. Almost like there was no question about it. Like I knew that was gonna happen, right? And then when we moved, because I did it once over like 15 years, so it took a while. Then when we switched to building this online business with my wife, I was like, sure, this is gonna happen. Other people have done it. Somebody have done it, so we can do it too. And then we did it. Sold more than $1 million in sales with the things that we didn't know anything about. But how do we get to that state where you feel like you are sure something is going to happen for you? Because that's sometimes we don't believe that. Even if we really want it and other people have done it, we don't believe it's for us for some reason or another. How do we live in a wish fulfilled? I always love that question.
It's a great question. And there's a couple of different aspects we can touch on here. There's a couple of things you mentioned that are very key to this as well. Like you mentioned, moving the goalposts, which is if I'm not happy at 40K a month, maybe it will be 100, maybe this, maybe that. And the big thing that I want to touch on here is that abundance is a state of being, not a number in your bank account. And that's not to say that money in your bank account is not important. Bills need to be paid. Life is inherently better with money in your bank account. So we're not ignoring that. But abundance is something that you can feel at any moment you choose when you are connected to something bigger than yourself. And when we're talking about certainty, you're talking about getting out of the human aspect of yourself and thinking that it's all up to you and your shoulders, because that for anybody is incredibly challenging to look at or to think about. So at least my view on certainty has always been that connection to something bigger than myself, whether you call it God, call it your higher self, call it whatever your belief system is. I'll only share, what has worked for me in that area. That has been my way of generating certainty in times, because it's directly tied to as well attachment to outcomes, at least from my perspective, and that non-attachment that comes from that. Because living in the wish fulfilled is a state of non-attachment. Living in the wish fulfilled is living in a state of being that allows you to be fully abundant, happy, loved, and caring, and have everything that you've ever wanted right here, right now. It's the illusion that someday that will arrive, but it's always right here and now. So living in the wish fulfilled is actually very tied to what you mentioned there before, which is that childlike essence. That childlike essence within us that you had when you were watching that movie. And by the way, Toy Story is one of my favorite movies as well, absolute masterpiece. And when we have that childlike essence in life, it's not just about operating from the essence of that you're a little kid, but it's that belief that anything is possible. Because when you're a kid, you want to be an astronaut, you want to be an artist, you want to be a designer. You don't care about what's possible or not. You just believe that you want this, and it's for you because you've seen it. So what we're looking into is tapping into that energy. A big part of the journey of reconnecting with that part of yourself is reconnecting with that inner child that did not get the love or validation or feelings or attention that they needed growing up. And this is very tied to money, very, very tied to money, because if we go deeper than the mind and stories, and we touched on a little bit there about energy and unconscious patterns and things like that, it's about feeling safe with that level of income, with that dream, with that vision, so that it's not kind of this thing that's so far out into the future that's like you can't grasp it, because that's a very intimidating thing. And what we're trying to do when we're living in the wish fulfilled is we're reprogramming the part of ourselves to feel safe with that in the now moment, which comes from that care that we can give to the inner child. So that's a journey in itself. And we all had a childhood. We all had different things that, came up throughout our life that oftentimes play into those unconscious patterns, right? We touched on a little bit there with the money stories, but a lot of the times the way we operate, how we show up, how we view ourselves, more importantly, and how we attach our self-worth to things as well outside of us can be directly attached to things. And hey, this is not to say that incredible things aren't built from that energy. They can be. But it's just when we're looking to walk this path of alignment and walk this path of deeper truth and integration within ourselves, where we're coming from this place of flow and life is abundant, life is fun, then it's about reconnecting to that childlike essence. But you can't reconnect to the childlike essence if that child within you has been neglected and never cared for. Because as we become adults, oftentimes we think, oh, well, childhood was in the past, I'm an adult now, let's keep moving forward. But that child within you doesn't go away. That child within you is always there. And if that child within you didn't receive something growing up, then that child within you is still feeling hurt, is still feeling like there is something off, and they will actually sabotage you in that growth of your business, in that that actualization of your vision, or just tapping into that fun enjoyment of life. Because all of these emotions are tied to love. And, if you look at children, they run around carefree. They're the most loving creatures out there. They're incredible, and we can learn so much from them. That's within all of us. And I can just definitely say from my own experience, the more that I've connected with that part of myself, the more life has become this place of joy and peace and tranquility and non-attachment, because I know that everything is within. Now, I'm not saying that I've arrived, I'm sitting at the top of the mountain with all the answers, but I do know that a big part of my journey has been that deep connection, and that allows me to have certainty in the fact that I have everything that I need right now. So therefore, anything that I do, it's coming from a place of excitement. And I'm not saying that there's no challenges and we're trying to run away from challenges and hardship here. We're not. We're just looking at it through the lens of like, I want these challenges. I want these things because they're helping me grow and elevate. But being able to tap into that excitement allows me then to understand that I have everything I need already. I'm not searching to grasp at anything outside of me to give me a sense of validation or worth. So therefore, anything that I do take action on must then be replaced with, instead of being driven by fear, must be driven by love, which is that passion and that purpose and that vision. And a lot of the time, we came here, especially as entrepreneurs, if we're drawn to that way of living, we're here to help people, impact people, here to genuinely give to the world something that has not been created or something that is different or new. And to be able to truly bring that to the world, it requires that frequency of love to be emitted throughout the product, throughout the service, and throughout everything that comes alongside that, because that's the things that shape humanity. That's the thing that shapes culture. And that's the thing that actually moves us and lights us up with that true fulfillment that we're truly looking for. And if you think about building something like that, it's like being a kid building some Lego. You're building a new world. You're building a new way of being. You're building a new structure, something that didn't exist before. So tapping into that inner child not only has been an unlock for me to unlock more certainty, because certainty has come from the fact that I don't need anything. So therefore, anything that I give is coming from overflow, right? That gives me certainty, because regardless of whether this thing works out or not, I don't need it. I have it. But this is an exciting thing for me to do. So of course, I'm going to put my heart and soul and work on this. So that certainty comes from that place for me anyway, specifically. But is there anything that you'd like to touch on to go deeper on that aspect?
Yeah, the things that came up in my head was everything. I know everything makes sense because I feel it in my bones. But I'm thinking, before I knew this, I still needed to get the things to give me abundance in a way. So at the beginning, I was just chasing, yes, of course, a dream, but it was probably more like respect, career, being heard, and being able to do incredible things so that I come back to my family and say, you see what is possible, a better life is possible. It was more like me expecting them to change.
Yep.
Right. And that never happened. Like, I tried, it never happened. Then I realized that everybody's in their own journey. Then when he became an online business, it was like, okay, I need to get safety for my family in terms of me and Alessia and everything I want to do. Again, to be an example with others, but also I need to get the thing, right? And getting the thing without by needing it, like that could be money, that could be a nice car, it could be a nice vacation whenever you want. That level of power, I feel like you need to have a phase of your life where you go after those things to understand that it's not about those things, because otherwise you wouldn't believe me. You don't. Nobody will believe you, right?
That can be
And
the case. Like I do believe that that can be the case. But I do believe as well that that is again another choice, right? It's that proactive
of course,
choice that you can take. So it's an interesting one, man, because I believe that, at least from my perspective, there is many options in front of us. And of course, it's very easy to sit there and say, hey, all this stuff means nothing. You should go on this journey. But like you said there, to choose that, sometimes we have to go off and figure out what we don't want or what we don't need or what we thought we wanted, which again, it's all perfect. But I do believe as well that there is a choice that is made as well, that if we're aware, which we are now coming more and more into within humanity, there's a lot more of this element of raising in consciousness that is happening just across everyone, right? Regardless of whether you follow those things or not, that is happening. And that is realigning and creating this desire within to reconnect with that part of ourselves that may feel like we were driven by things outside of ourselves, to point us back inwards. And I think it's just a natural evolution of really humanity. So I do believe that there is like a proactive choice where people can jump in and be like, hey, like I know all of these things are amazing, but at least if you're going to pursue those things from the awareness that you know that you want it to feel a certain way, and then make the choice. Because otherwise it's an unconscious thing. And that doesn't, I just don't believe that people have to create that level of pain for themselves if they don't want to. Because there's nothing worse than chasing something because you think it'll give you what you want and realize that it doesn't. Because it's an empty feeling. And I know, because I've been there myself personally as well, on a more of a minor degree, right? Because my journey with this side of things has started very early in my life. But we also then can come back to understanding that none of those desires are wrong. It's not, we're not saying that though having nice things is wrong in any way, shape, or form. We should just be a monk and live under a bridge. Like, that's not what we're talking about at all.
Yeah,
Nice
no,
things
thanks
are
for
amazing.
saying that.
Of course, because these beautiful things, like for me, it's homes. I love living in beautiful homes. And that's just part of my
See,
value set. Yeah, I love being in those environments because I see those things, beautiful cars, beautiful craftsmanship in watches, beautiful homes, beautiful clothing. All of these things are expressions of just divine essence, right? God, whatever you call it, it's beautiful. It's amazing. But we just have to be careful where we're pursuing those things from, because me being in a beautiful home because I feel like I need this beautiful home for people to see me a certain way is not really coming from that pure essence that we're really looking at here. It's coming from that place of need. It's coming from fear. It's coming from some form of lack within. So therefore, that expression that I'm having from this desire and actualizing that, it's not going to give me fulfillment. I'm not really going to be able to enjoy the nice home or the car or the thing, right? It might give me that burst of dopamine, but at the deepest level, there'll be some level of disappointment because that pursuit was in the attainment of that to feel a certain way that is not accessible by something outside of yourself. And I believe that there's always a choice to go and to pursue that from a different path. But then when you're coming from that place within of wholeness, right? And you're on that journey, at least, right? Very unique for everybody. And then you attain those things. Wow. That's life changing, because that is a full expression of your manifestation from within. So it just amplifies the love and fulfillment that you feel. The success that you feel it can't even be put into words. And that can happen at any stage in your life. But it's just where we're pursuing those things from is really what I wanted to highlight there.
thank you. And thank you for clarifying. This is so key. Yes, there's nothing wrong with the things.
Of
It's
course.
more like why, and if it's an expression of you, like that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. And then also make me think about something, because most of us might be in the pursuit of achieving something. It might be money, it might be anything else, especially in business. And I surely have done this a million times. I wouldn't allow myself breaks or doing non-productive work. I would get stuck in front of a laptop trying to figure it out. And there's something that helped me massively that you introduced me to. I did hear about it before, but I never really practiced it. It was breath work. And the way I personally feel it does to me is anytime I'm way too much in my head, I cannot feel my body. I cannot be in tune with my intuition, and breath work kind of jolts the system, actually lights it on fire to remove this dense energy that's created around my head and gives me again certainty. Can you speak a bit more about breath work and why do you think is going to be helpful? And
Mm.
how many other ways you use breath work, and I just want people to know more about it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So I believe that breathwork is a beautiful extension of meditation. The first thing I would always recommend to anybody is meditation. It was the very first thing that I started with a number of years ago, probably 5 years ago at this point, and it's something I can proudly say I've been very, very consistent with it because it's been the staple of my own transformation. Now, I haven't done it every single day. I'm not perfect like anybody else. I miss a couple of days here and there, but it's a thing I can drastically notice when I do it and when I don't. And that for me has just been an incredible starting point. So I wouldn't personally jump into breathwork straight away. Not for any other reason other than the fact that you want to be able to just be comfortable with silence first. You want to be able to just be comfortable with the understanding that you are not your thoughts. And me saying that is one thing, but you actually knowing that and experiencing that is a different thing. So when you can sit down and be in silence and just be at peace, right? And even when your mind is trying to pull you in another direction and trying to think about what you should have said in that conversation earlier, or the to-do list that's there, bringing yourself back to be able to understand that you are the observer of the mind at work, and to understand that there is a separation there between that, and it's not you. Because if you're living a life where you think that you are your thoughts constantly, that's a very challenging place to live. Very challenging, because you're constantly caught up in mental chatter. You miss the whole world around you. You're never in the present moment. And that's a challenging place to be. I lived many, many years of my life there as well, like many do. The next stage of that then is getting into something like breathwork. What I'll touch on here is that we all have unique gifts and abilities. Intuition would be the most widely known. There's different types of intuition. There's different ways that we can tap into that kind of connection or that intuitive sense. You can look at it as being able to feel into certain energy. You can look at it as a deep knowing. You've mentioned this a couple of times briefly throughout the conversation. I just know. That's something that it's part of intuition. And it's not something that you read in a book. It's not something that you hear from somebody else. It's something that you know deep within yourself. And I always come back to this understanding as well, is that the work that I do, or the work that anybody does, it just helps someone unlock more of themselves. It's not that I am this person here with all of these incredible insights and knowledge that is now given and passed on to somebody else. That's part of it, for sure, because I go deep into these things. But really, it's about helping someone unlock those gifts and abilities within themselves, because that is the long-term sustainable tool set that can be applied to anything moving forward. Breathwork is one of those things. It just allows you to be able to access a state of being, a certain part of your mind that is not always active, and it can bring you back into that center point. And that can be done through a variety of different ways, because we are not taught how to breathe. And we breathe all day long. It's the thing that keeps us alive. But when do you intentionally breathe throughout the day? That will be the first place to start. Where can I intentionally include more of a deeper breath, whether that's in through the nose, out to the mouth, into the mouth, out through the mouth? All these different ways of breathing have different purposes. They can be used for different things. You can do 3 inhales and then the slow exhale, and that can amplify your breath. Or you can do some of the things that we've done, which is breathing in and holding it and being able to settle into that and be able to relax into the body. There is many, many ways. There's no right or wrong with any of this, but it's more just about bringing a sense of intention to the breaths that you do have. You know, there's an incredible thing that you can do if you ever feel stressed out, which is just to breathe 10 times. Sounds so simple, but intentionally breathing 10 times, if you feel stressed out, you'll naturally just feel that tension loosen. And even those simple points and tools that you can use throughout the day are just easy things to implement to get more familiar with this type of way of being. And that allows you to just tap into more of yourself in those moments and come back to the understanding and the reminder that you are not your mind. So I think that meditation, intentional breathing, and then things like breath work, which is more of a ceremony, you could call it that, where you either do it on a one-to-one basis or you do it in a group setting, that can really help you connect to divine intelligence, higher intelligence, right? That we all have access to. Because if you think about the intuition is something that we all have the ability to have within our own being. Where does that come from? That starts to beg the question of like, okay, well, we're connected to something greater than ourselves, and that's its own journey. But breath work allows you to amplify that in its own way, to be able to connect to that in a deeper level. And, you know, I've had some very, very powerful breathwork sessions. I do it at least a number of times a week just to reset my own self and be able to connect with different elements of guidance that I'm looking to be able to move myself forward. So I think it's an incredible tool. I would use it with discernment as well, though, because, you know, there is parts of you that are being activated that will start to stir up things. So I just want to have this as a very intentional disclaimer here, that if we think of it this way, let's say you have a glass of water, right? So I have a glass of water beside me here, this glass of water. And we have all of these different unconscious patterns, stories, different things we've touched on throughout this call. At the very end of that glass is there's a little bit of dirt. And those dirt would represent the unconscious patterns, the stories, the beliefs, all these different things. When you use something like breath work or meditation in that case as well, what you're doing is you're subtly stirring the glass. So when you stir the glass, the pieces at the bottom, they have to kind of be part of the water now, because they're not sitting there anymore. They're not unconscious. They're being stirred into your essence. So what can happen for many people if they don't understand the integration side of things, which is a big part of working with someone intentionally when you do this type of work, because otherwise you can stir that glass, all these things come up to the surface and you've no idea what's going on. It can actually feel like things are going worse than they were actually going better. So just to use these different tools with discernment and to make sure that You understand that, first of all. And then if you're working with somebody, even better, who understands these things as well, because that allows you to actually integrate the things that are moving in the water, right? Anything that comes up. So I'll use a very, very quick example of this from myself. I may do a meditation, I may do some breath work, I may go work with a coach or somebody I'm connecting with. And then I will notice that when I start to do these things and I start to amplify my energy, what's happening is your frequency baseline is rising. You're becoming closer to your authentic self. You're coming from a deeper place of love. Your heart is opening. You're balancing your energy, right? I know we're using a lot of different terms here, but just stick with me. You're doing these different things. And what can happen then is a lot of unconscious patterns start to come up from the unconscious. They start to unravel. And then you start experiencing all of this doubt or this judgment of other people, and you kind of getting a little bit confused as to like why you feel so down or pulled down. This is all of the parts of the unraveling process. All of these things are being let go of. But the integration point here is to be able to sit with those things and to be able to give them love. If it's part of the inner child, for example, being able to give that part of yourself love. If it's judgment of other people, being able to pull yourself back into non-judgment and to be able to see that we are all expressions of each other in different ways, and we can't judge anybody, because any judgment on somebody else is a judgment of myself in some way, shape, or form. So we have to be careful of like these different things that come up from the surface, being able to really integrate those in a way that is loving, caring, and taking that time for yourself, so that then you can restabilize at that new level and not just slip back down into what you did before. Because there's many people who spend years and years and years on the healing journey, years doing breath work, years doing things like plant medicine, and there's no integration. So nothing really changes. There has to be integration. The hard part starts after all of these things to really integrate them. And that's why working with someone is actually really powerful in that area.
Yeah. Thanks for the disclaimer. And I find that when I do this kind of stuff, I really want to get to the root of the problem. Let's call it that. If there's something that bothers me, and I found that just breath work was just removing all the clutter and giving me clarity on, okay, this is what I was looking for, because I was ready to face it. So I understand what you're saying there. And then,
Ready,
okay,
keyword there.
yes. And there's also another thing that I want to ask you about, just to add some more to the pile
Let's go.
of this session. A year ago, I had no idea about feminine and masculine energy. I have no idea what that was. It just didn't ring a bell, nothing. But understanding that helped me massively to understand my actions, my communications, even my relationship with my wife completely changed, and the way my relationship with my work as well. Can you briefly touch upon the difference between the two type of energy in like the simplest way possible, and why it's important for us to tap from both of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, of course. So the first thing to understand is this may be triggering for many people, but we all have masculine and feminine energy within all of us. And masculine and feminine in this context is not related to a man or a woman. It's just a type of energy. It represents something within all of us. So a very simpler way to put it would be feminine energy, for example, would be more of the creative side of things, more of the expression. It would be more compassion, more of that connection, receivership, peace, right? It's a big part of this as well. The masculine is more of the vision, the mental side, the purpose, the actualization of bringing that into reality, the implementation, the different things that can come from that. And the balance of those two energies allows us to tap into both those energies within ourselves to be at a place of authenticity. A place of authenticity allows us to access both in a very healthy way, but there's shadow aspects to both of those energies as well. So there is a divine masculine, which is more of a healthy masculine energy, which is firm in communication, direct, but coming from a place of understanding. It's not coming from a place of trying to force or control. Very key difference there. Then you have which would be more of a wounded masculine energy. So you have that more divine and then more wounded. Then you also have that in representation for the feminine as well. Feminine energy and its divinity, right? Divine feminine energy would be love, compassion, receivership, playfulness, being able to be creative. But then the shadow aspect of that, the wounded aspect, would be not having boundaries, people pleasing, being able to falling into victimhood or being passive aggressive, right? So there's different elements to both. So we have to be able to make sure that, yes, we are operating from both of these energies from a place that is healthy and healed. And that's part of, that internal journey of looking at some of these patterns that may have come from childhood or teenage years or, earlier or later in life, and look at those to see, hey, what did I learn unconsciously from my mother and from my father? Because that is our first understanding of what these two energies represent. So your father growing up will be your understanding of what masculine energy is. Your mother will be your representation of what feminine energy is. So you will go your life then thinking that is masculine, that is feminine, because of those understandings. Then you will go throughout your life and you'll uncover your own versions of that. And you'll probably make some corrections along the way and probably realize, hey, this was probably not the way I wanted to operate. And this is probably different here as well. So that allows us to then rebalance at this place of understanding what that means for us. But I guess really in a business sense, what we need to be able to do is to be able to balance these two things, which is really where we're finding that piece of alignment. Finding that place of alignment is finding that nice harmony between those two. So from a masculine side, having that vision that is pulling you forward, feeling like you are on purpose, doing hard things that challenge that to be able to help you grow and expand into the highest version of you who can hold this vision that you have in your mind. Then we need that feminine energy to be able to relax into understanding that the vision that we have comes from a desire that is already in existence. Now to live in the wish fulfilled, we can now sit down and receive. Let it be. You don't have to perform. Perform is a wounded masculine energy. Being productive is not just doing more. Being productive can actually be in this rest and recuperation stage where you're working on your nervous system. You're working on rewiring the subconscious, allowing yourself to just take time and attention for yourself and knowing that that is one of the most productive things that you can do as well. So it's about balancing these two, but that's the hard part, because then the question becomes, okay, well, when do we tap into which one? Well, that's when we have to understand that we are here and we are supported on this journey as well, which is why things like meditation and breath work and, this intuition we're talking about here, this connection, that allows us, when we are in balance, to be able to connect with a higher source to guide us in the right direction. And for us, also us to use our own discernment as to when is the best time to rest and recuperate. When is the best time for us to go all in and fully work on something that is bringing this element of excitement, but also then allows us to actualize this vision and this mission. And it's the middle way. If you look at the yin and the yang symbol, right? It's a great representation of this, because it's basically what they're saying. The yin and the yang, that symbol of having that kind of fishtail almost at one side and then at the other, and then that circle in the middle as well. That represents good and bad and good, but also represents masculine and feminine and masculine. And that line in between the middle is walking the middle path. And walking in the middle path is that path that we're trying to balance here. Now, as we extend into this place of wanting deeper alignment and fulfillment in our work, because what we've discussed thus far is talking about building from that place of, I need to always be in my masculine energy and constantly be building and building and building and building. But if it's coming from needing to perform or need validation or some form of lack, then it's imbalanced, and it creates this lack of fulfillment in us that needs to be rebalanced, which is why we're now craving this kind of less team, less, stress. We're looking to rebalance ourselves. So then when we start to bring ourselves back into balance, it's about managing that balance and finding out which energy do I need to be more in right now. And we don't always have to refer to it as, masculine and feminine. That's just kind of like the more spiritual way of looking at it, because it's within all of us. But we can look at it as, hey, when do I need to be in go mode? When am I going to create some sacred structure to my day so that things are moving forward? But then also I'm going to schedule in and structure some rest and recuperation time, or go out meet with friends, or go to an event, or do something fun to allow myself to enjoy the present moment, because that is living in the wish fulfilled. Because if we're constantly performing because we need to bring something into reality, then that's coming from lack, and lack does not align with living in the wish fulfilled. So it's that fine balance of these two, of walking the middle way, knowing what we need in each moment in time, which is it's easier said than done, right? Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's a challenging thing. So that would be the best way to describe it, especially in the context that we're discussing right now.
Yeah, that's very interesting because most of us probably don't really want to take breaks until they achieved what they want. I definitely was one of those. You feel like you need to work, build the funnel, write the emails, run the ad until you get the proof that what you're doing is right. And then it doesn't happen because the energy behind it is what you say is lack,
Hmm.
and the universe will reflect back the same energy. This is
Yeah.
what I found as well.
Yeah.
And this brings me to my next question for you is, how do we so we do all these things because we want to be strategic about our business. That's natural. We want productivity, we want control to some extent, but then the reality of things is that when you do align work, things just happen randomly. This is what I found. I remember when I was trying to make this coaching brand work, I would just do the things. I have the lead magnet, I have the funnel, I have the traffic coming from these videos, I have the right call to action. The video has got the structure. Everything was to the T controlled, and nothing was working for the love of me. Because not because I was doing the wrong things, but I was doing the things with the wrong motivation. Then I started doing things like, okay, I don't need complicated editing on my videos. Let's fire the editing agency and do something that's a bit more raw. Let's not overthink the title and go with the flow. Let's start removing lead magnets because smart people will know how to find me. And like all of these things came from a different feeling in my body that was, for me, I craved that relaxation. More like I want to position in a more authoritative state, and I'm going to try and put on actions to reflect how I want to feel. And from that point on, it was crazy because I had no control over anything. Yeah, sure, you've got a funnel, but the best clients don't come from the funnel. They come from a random video that you didn't really think much of, or maybe from a conversation. So, how do you balance the needing of control to just letting the higher version of yourself just do the work, the aligned work? It doesn't matter if it's a lot of work or relaxed work. It's more like what's driven the action is your true self, and that is what's going to be reflected back to you. But how do we deal with the uncertainty of it all?
It's a great question. And this is there's many different aspects to this, but what we'll touch on here is the first thing that comes to mind is, why do we need to control? Because what would be reflected back there is that there's a challenge arising to lean into surrendering. There's something there that needs to control. There's something there that needs to grasp onto some level of certainty. But the certainty is there. And we talked about this, it kind of comes from within, right? So that's the whole journey, right? The whole journey is becoming whole within, so that then every action that comes after that comes from that place of wholeness, which is that alignment piece. Now, again, it's not that we have to reach this state of wholeness and then we're perfect and then we take action. It's not that. It's both and. It's always both and. So that's the first thing. But then what I would say around this is that it's very nuanced for each person. A big part of the work that I do, which you'll know yourself, is knowing thyself and knowing how you operate. Because many people may operate in a very different way than I would, or that you would. And that's beautiful. That's perfect. But it's knowing that is the thing that's most powerful. Because oftentimes, especially within the coaching industry or something that's based online, you can jump into communities or programs or these different areas and feel like there is a right way. But there is no right way. There's only a right way for you and how you operate. But that comes from knowing yourself, which happens within the journey of going within and uncover what truth means for you. So some of the things that we're talking about in this video that we're having right, or this conversation we're having right now, may resonate. That would be an indication to go deeper, to learn more about yourself. And when you find what works for you, and I know it sounds so cliche, but it's really what works for you. It's what works for you in the seasons that you're in. It's what works for you and how you want to portray yourself online. It's what works for you and how you want to lay out your funnel, or how you want to speak, or who you want to attract. Like, there's all of these different aspects. And when you go on the journey of really getting to know yourself and your true nature, your way of operating within business. That is the real big unlock, at least what I found for myself and for many clients as well. So an example of this, right? I'll give an example here is, I know for me personally, I go through a lot of waves because I sit with a lot of things that come up for me internally. Again, because I've chosen to go this path, embodiment is very important to me. So therefore, I am constantly moving through different things that are coming up for me. So if I was to get into hustle mode and to constantly work all day, every day, and have this kind of really rigid schedule, which I used to have, I would just reject it because it's not how I operate. I operate in waves, which means that I could do 3 days of incredible amount of work and it would just be this big, exciting project. But then I would reach a point where it's like, I'm not doing anything now for like 2 days, 3 days. I may take 2 weeks off. Who knows? But that is just how I operate. And the more that I've built the business around that, the more, I guess you could say, I have some element of control around it. But I'm also just surrendering into like, I know the things are going to work out. I don't need these outcomes. So I trust that what I'm doing is going to actualize and move in a sustainable way. So I wouldn't say it's about learning to control. I'd say it would be more just like learning to let go and understanding that if you don't need the outcomes, which I know is easier said than done, but when you don't need those things, you can tap into truly that state of just receiving what it is that you want. And knowing yourself in that way is part of that journey. Knowing your rhythms, your seasons, and different things like that as well. And again, it's a fine balance.
It's what you said before, like you know yourself. And for the longest time, I didn't feel like I knew myself at all. Because when you're not sure of what's the right thing to do, it's common, especially at the beginning. We buy the course, we work with the person, we join the community, and we find out about the right way, and we find out about another right way, and then another, and then another. And then I personally was the guy that I was so insecure that for every situation I had a mental hero in my head, like somebody that I met in the past that would handle the situation perfectly. and and I would just browse into my library of heroes and think, okay, what would this person do? And that is crazy because you never know where you stand. You're constantly living. I was constantly living in a uh, performance mode, but I needed saturation of all of this for me to understand where I was standing and who I was. And then when I found that balance, I started saying, okay, it's about how would I do this? Honestly, what would be the best way I could do this? Even if nobody's done it before, people are going to judge me. Who cares? If it feels good, it must be good. And then when you start trusting yourself, like when I started trusting that feeling, things started to happen randomly, which it's kind of like illuminating and frustrating at the same time because the mind wants to control, but your heart knows. And
Exactly.
when you allow it to know and lead the way in balance with your head, this is what this is why I like the word alignment so much.
Yeah.
That's when I feel like there is the magic of crafting the life that you really want because it's in line with the whole of you.
Yes.
I love this conversation, Jordan. I've got one last question from you, and then
Of
I'm
course.
gonna let you go. uh If you had to name one skill that every entrepreneur should master that would change everything, what would that be?
It's a great question. I mean, if I was to give a very simple answer, and I'll give a deeper answer afterwards, but a very simple answer is to focus on one thing. Focusing on one thing and actualizing that thing until it's at its full fruition is very, very powerful. But it takes so much time and consistency and love put into that to really bring it into what it's truly meant to be. But oftentimes we can get very distracted of a new thing, a new way, a new conversation about something else. And our mind will naturally gravitate towards those things because we're curious human beings, right? And we like new things because we're entrepreneurs and there's new stuff happening and we want to be part of it and all this part. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just being able to have the discernment of being able to say, hey, this is amazing. This sounds super cool. It's just not for me right now. I'm going to put it in a maybe pile for maybe in a couple of months, a couple of years, whatever the case is. So I think that is the biggest thing. And it's such a simple thing, but it just comes back to focus, like being able to focus on one specific thing. And that goes down to the larger aspect of like, hey, what is my core mission in this world? It's a big, big question, but at least having an overarching view of what that is and then committing to that is incredibly powerful. Then being able to dial that back down and being like, okay, well, what does this look like on a smaller scale? Like, what's the 1 year vision and what's the general direction I want to go in? I don't believe in setting, specific goals for the next 5-10 years. It's just like, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to change. We're going to evolve. All these things are going to happen along the way. So those getting too granular with those things can be actually just not that helpful. But having commitment and focus to that offer that plays a part in this bigger vision and actualizing that to its greatest potential, it's like, that's what we're talking about. It's that commitment to that one thing. And then even within that, it's like, okay, well, what's the first thing that I need to move towards? What's the project I need to focus on that's actually going to implement and actualize this in the next 3 months? So then it's committing to that project fully before moving on to the next thing. So for example, it could be you're working on a really great sales page and video that's going to help articulate this offer. Well, that's the core project and nothing else gets focused on. Obviously, you do your posting and you do your little bits that have to be done, but that's the one core thing that takes up all the mental energy and space, so that all of your mental capacity, all your energy goes into that masterpiece. And then that's done for the time it's done. So I think that is really the biggest thing that could be cultivated. But then on a deeper level, it comes back to knowing yourself, because all of the answers that you're truly looking for come from you connecting deeper with yourself. And that's a really, really powerful thing if you go on that journey, so that you're not necessarily looking outside of yourself for answers. Not saying that mentorship or guidance or working with someone or being part of communities is a thing that you shouldn't be part of. That's absolutely part of the journey. But not coming from a place of like, I need these people to solve my problems for me. I need these people to show me the way. Because at least for me, the best coaches, best mentors, best guides I've worked with across business, spirituality, all these different aspects have always pointed me back into myself. And that has allowed me, especially over the last 2 or 3 years or so, to rapidly accelerate in my own journey, because I've realized and had this breakthrough moment at least a number of times that nobody is coming to walk your path for you. But you must know yourself enough to be able to trust that you are the one to walk this path and no one else can do that. And that's both terrifying, but also liberating at the same time, when you truly understand that that is it, because you can stop looking around you then for people to give you the way. So that comes from knowing thyself. And when you know thyself, it allows you to show up from that beautiful place of magnetic energy that is authentic, because you know that, hey, this is one of my talents. This is one of my gifts that I'm going to express into the world. I'm going to harness this. I'm going to, for me, I know communication is something that I've been working on and is something that is a skill of mine. So I lean into that. Okay, so video content is something I get really excited about. So that's a way for me to practice that skill. So I lean in on that. It's not that writing is not something I like to do. It'll be a part of my strategy. It's something I'm actually working on behind the scenes right now, which would be really cool to launch over the next couple of weeks or so. But video is always going to be the primary source for me. That's why I love conversations like this as well. So when you know that, you can stop worrying about all the other things that could potentially be something that you could do, because you know that that's just your methodology. And yeah, someone could have amazing success with a newsletter or all these other things, but I know for me, this is my way. So I don't have to listen to that. It's just, it's a nice idea. I'm so glad that that's working for that person, but it's just not for me. So when you know yourself and you go on that journey, and I'm still on that journey, don't get me wrong, but the deeper you get to know yourself and understand your true essence, your true nature, life starts to form in a way that is really magical. And that's probably the best way to put it.
I love it. Yes. You just make me remind of all of the times that I heard incredible strategies and my body felt like it was about to throw up and said, nope, this is not for me. I'm not going to do it. And I'm happy it works for you, mate. I'm going to do my version of that.
Yep.
And I totally understand. I mean, for me, priorities are like so crucial. We wouldn't have done anything that we've done if we didn't focus on something for a long time. So yeah, that's absolutely key. Jordan, it's been amazing. I want to thank you for being here. And how can people get in touch with you if they resonated with anything that we said so far? Instagram, whatever.
Yeah, well, first of all, man, thank you for having me. Great to have this conversation and to be able to share this space with you. So really honored to be able to do that. To be able to find me, you'll find me at the Jordan Lee, so D like THE .Jordan Lee on Instagram. I have the same username on YouTube, but you can just type in Jordan Lee. You'll see my face pop up somewhere. And they're my two main channels. Like you'll find everything you need to know there and you'll be able to learn more about me and stuff.
Yes. And even if you need to calm yourself down, like hearing Jordan speak, it's a natural soother. So it's always good.
I hope you enjoyed the interview. Every time I speak with Jordan, I feel energized and it makes me want to do things that I'm truly excited about. And speaking about something that I'm excited about is about building. I'm a builder and sometimes I just want to test things. And the last test I did was building a self-liquidating offer funnel. And because I thought it was fun, I recorded the whole process. So if you want to go back into the practical world on how to make money and create offers that make sense, I recorded the whole process, and the first video of the process, you can watch it right here.